So my name is Rob Hamblen, and I'm a product designer. I have been for 25 years. I've worked at some pretty cool companies like IBM, Qualcomm, and a small agency here in Berlin called AJ and Smart. And I now am the founder of my own boutique agency called Leap. And yeah, we basically help companies here in Germany and also all around the world, in the US as well, help make not just products, but the products that are right for their customers.
All right, so today I want to talk to you about the art of sprint, product sprint. So, for those who don't know, can you tell us exactly what a product sprint is?
Yeah, a product sprint. So originally a design sprint conceived by ex-Google Ventures partner Jake Knapp. The design sprint was actually a 1-week workshop that required normally the client that we work with to block an entire week to create a solution to solve a really tough or pressing business challenge. And at Leap, we love Jake, but we wanted to make the sprint better for our clients. So we have condensed that 5-day workshop or that 5-day process into a 4-day kind of version of that. And actually, that was originally done at AJ and Smart, and I've now kind of used that same process to help companies achieve the realization and materialization of what their product or business idea is, improved, whether it's actually going to be something that they can move forward with. And the original sprint from Jake was designed for them at Google Ventures to know whether they wanted to invest money into that product or that business idea within 5 days. So same principle applies. A lot of my clients come to Leap with a significant challenge that it's kind of like, for them, they're so immersed into these kind of products that they want to make. It's just really hard for them to conceive like what this product is likely going to look like. So when we apply the sprint to help them, they get a good understanding of whether it's going to be worth even putting that money into that, or basically a go or no go. That's probably the best way of explaining it.
Okay, and can you tell me then what you think or what you've witnessed the biggest bottleneck with this design sprint methodology is?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dan. And actually, bottleneck is probably a good way of explaining it. And that is that, quite often when I'm talking to a new client, and they kind of sit within 2 buckets. They either know the process or they have no idea how the process can help them. But typically what I would say is the ones that don't know the process, for me, it's like knowing what I know now from running like hundreds of design sprints and how it can rapidly materialize a vision of this product that they want to make. That's the thing. For me, it's like being able to somehow transport them from not knowing into knowing before they've run the sprint, so they know what to expect. And I'll just tell a little story. That is that back in 2009, I co-founded a product, and we launched it on the App Store, and we ended up making pretty much the whole product experience. And if I'd only known the design sprint as I know it now back then, it would have actually helped us prioritize like what were the important parts of that product to actually make or prioritize first, rather than making the whole thing. And I think this is the kind of pattern I'm seeing, is that when I'm having these conversations with these clients, they're so in the thick of their challenge and their problems, and they're not the problems of the product, but they're actually like, how are they going to make this thing? How are they going to realize it? How are they going to understand how it's going to function? They're so caught in all of that, they can't really see the wood for the trees. They don't know how to prioritize. And really, for me, the design sprint is the perfect methodology or process that you could apply to a big challenge that would help them actually go through that journey. So the roadblock is being able to lift the weight and the burden of that product responsibility to when they've completed a sprint, and then they have this kind of clarity to know how to move forward.
And how do you prioritize products features? So what's your preferred method of prioritization when you have all of your research in and you've done your sprint? How do you prioritize what goes in the product?
Yeah, that's a really good one as well. So I don't. And actually, I advise my product teams to take a step back from it as well. And one of the great things that we have as a byproduct from the sprint is data. So I run iteration sprints, which means that we run a 2-week sprint. And what that means is that after the week 1, we get a ton of data from 5 specifically targeted users. And we can then look at that data and go, right, well, if we were to make these changes, maybe kill these features that maybe didn't resonate so well, maybe even pivot a little bit on some of the business model potentially, we're able to understand from those 5 potential users, like the likelihood of like how that product's going to land with those potential customers. And then when we go into the iteration sprint, we can then test again. So what I would always say is, to answer that question, is that the product people, we are here as experts, but we are not our end customers. But the people that we've tested with, the customers or the end users that we've tested with, which would be 10 during that 2-week period, they would actually help you understand and prioritize which features resonate with them. So it's funny because quite often I start my product sprints right at the beginning. I just say, yeah, I'm not an expert in kind of, what it is that you're making. And I always get like a ton of puzzle faces. But like, well, like, what are you in? Like, you're this guy, like, and it's, of course, yeah, I run sprints, I know product, and I have a good idea of what will work and what won't work, but I'm not the end user. So this is why we end up pulling the data and understanding what resonates with them, so that they can also understand, what we can understand from them, like what their priorities are. But when I run my design sprints at Leap, I bring a design thinking component in up front, which means that we try and get some empathy, we try and get an understanding of our potential customers, even before we go into the actual workshop and the sprint where the business people are. So normally what would happen is, without doing that, you would go in as an expert with assumptions of like how something can be. And, when there's a collective senior team, there's a ton of really good assumptions, but they're still not good enough. So when I have some data insights or some customer insights from customers that we've already spoken to, that means that I can take those insights into the product workshop, which means that I have these kind of like loaded assumptions, and that helps us to also make a more accurate understanding of features and requirements and priorities. And often what I see as a pattern from talking to end users up front is that we can identify potential pain points that they're already having, maybe not with an existing product or the product that we're making, but from a typical industry comparison, we can draw some really interesting insights of like where the pain points, where they're having the most friction at the moment. And with design thinking, when you apply this process to understanding that means that we can then go, right, we have assumptions, and we can identify potential opportunities of how we can solve those friction points. And that's what we take into a sprint. And that's what then helps us to identify what users potentially want from this product experience, from an MVP and beyond. But it also helps us to then prioritize the features that they would need in order to get started.